Welcome to the Stairway to Heaven. We're coming to you bringing insights into the ever-changing high-frequency currents now bathing the planet and their effect on us all, the source of vital information for the evolving human being. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Perception, castles of sand. I spent much of my childhood in Saudi Arabia. My best friend lived next door, and every weekend would go with her family to a bay in the Persian Gulf. Her father would fish, her mother sunbathe, while my friend, her little brother, and I would play in the sand and swim. One trip, we decided to make a sand castle, a fortress, really. We used our sand buckets and shovels to mold structures in the moist sand next to the water. We created a huge wall with towers on every corner surrounding a beautiful sand-dripped castle. Her little brother manned the walls with his toy soldiers, while she and I made princesses out of our Barbie dolls. We were absorbed for hours creating a world of our own, complete with storyline, brave heroes, and beautiful heroines. Finally, as the day wore on, it became too hot in the Arabian sun, so the three of us went for a swim and played in the surf. As evening came and we cooled off, we were compelled to return to our magnificent castle, only to find the tide had come in and washed everything away. Nothing was left of our wonderful medieval world but a ripple in the sand on the beach. Even the soldiers and dolls were gone, victims of a relentless, unstoppable tide. Just so, our collective tide is coming, in the form of waves of frequency, washing away all our constructs, leaving seeming devastation in its wake. We're like children, returning to play in a world that no longer exists, with nothing but vast expanses of sand to take its place. Yet, truth be told, it was always just sand, molded by our imaginations into a fanciful world. That world, like all things, is subject to the laws of nature, one of constant change, no matter how we might wish it otherwise. In prior Stairway to Heaven episodes, we've examined the evolving and devolving nature of truth that presents dependent upon the frequency or light available. However, there comes a point during times of increased light that the old realities no longer maintained by the new ambient frequency are totally washed away to make room for new ones which are better supported by the light at hand. Perceived truth and reality are only as expansive and as inclusive as the data that confirms them. The washing away of one reality and entering the new changes our perceptions and ability to access data. It also changes the amount of data available to us. Rising frequency promotes a more expansive reality. In a more expansive reality, truth is more expansive and inclusive. So expansive, in fact, that there's more data than one person can process or contain. Like the trillion grains of sand on the beach of my childhood, we must perceive it as a beach as we're unable to take in the totality of each of its parts. Yet, much like the atoms making up physical matter, without the grains of sand, the beach would not exist. The beach is simply a holographical representation manufactured by our mind, enabling us to perceive the totality without getting lost in the overwhelming details. It's impossible for one person to interpret and categorize uncountable numbers of unique grains of sand. We may mold the sand this way or that, call it by one name or another, but the fact remains it's the trillions of individual grains of sand that will eventually shift and change according to nature's dictates, not our own. The challenge is embracing the portion of perceived truth and reality appropriate to our purpose, intent, level of processing, with the understanding that it's only a portion of the reality we have created, not the whole enchilada. Purpose and intent are key, as without them we're left floundering in seas of infinite possibility, without the substance to draw together that which we desire to create and experience. As our perceptions expand, so do the possibilities. Envision, if you will, a group of people huddled around a candle in the middle of a darkened gymnasium. They can only perceive as far as the light of the candle reaches. Suddenly, someone walks in and turns on the overhead lights, and the entire gym becomes visible. As the lights come on, flooding all the heretofore unseen spaces, an entirely different reality is exposed. Instead of a small, finite circle, we find ourselves in a huge space with bleachers, a stage, and multiple doors, hinting at an entirely different world on the other side. This sudden expansion of perception and reality is what we're now experiencing on many levels. How we each choose to embrace and interpret the expansion is limited by our damage, patterns, and willingness to shift. Naturally, this has each of us experiencing the changes on a different level according to our gifts and our limitations. One sign of this expansion is a slow realization that we've been taking facts and using them to draw limited conclusions, if not totally erroneous ones. The facts may indeed be true, but through limited perceptions and the use of giant leaps of illogic to fill in the blanks, we end up embracing a total falsehood. Now we see that instead of a grand council surrounded by the great void, contemplating the universe, we're but a small group sitting on the floor huddled around a candle. Furthermore, we're in the middle of a vast gymnasium containing multiple doorways into other worlds. Some will take to this devastating realization more readily than others. Many prefer seeing themselves as a big fish in a small pond holding all the answers. Better to deny what's right before them than reevaluate their status and importance in the larger scheme of things. No one holds all the answers, though we may have embraced that illusion at one time. As frequency rises, it's becoming increasingly apparent that reality is way too expansive to be received or contained by a single individual. Only by letting go of our old concepts, opening to new data, and combining our perceptions can a larger perception of reality be accessed. It only makes sense that if perceived truth and reality are only as expansive and inclusive as the data that confirms them, it would prove extremely beneficial to have all the data we can access. Increasingly, through cooperating with others and diligently processing our resistance to do so, we have the opportunity to enter into unity consciousness and the unified field. The quality and quantity of data is unlimited in the unified field, restricted only by our level of awareness and ability to contain it. The more of us working together participating in unified consciousness, the larger our combined perception and capacity for containment. However, there is a price of entry. We must sacrifice our ego, self-image, and separatism, our delusions of grandeur, and enter the childlike wonder of not knowing. Only through innocence and selfless collaboration can a greater truth be unveiled, providing more raw material for us to build even greater things better suited to the new ambient frequency at hand. This approach is not well received by everyone. There are many individuals and systems that made exploitive use of the murky recesses in between facts throughout the Dark Ages. They created a lucrative practice in painting a self-serving reality on the blank areas by lying with the truth. The facts were true, but the devil was in the dark spaces in between. Wars are now being waged to maintain control of a rapidly failing, distorted reality rather than embrace expansive truth. As more light becomes available, monopolies are being shaken at their foundations, and those at the top are pulling out all the stops to maintain control. However, we're not without resources in this little coup. The more expansive and accurate our perceptions as individuals and as a group, the fewer gaps in the data and the less exploitable we become. There are some systems that are adjusting to the expansive information, improving and evolving with the times. Entire corporations are embracing a new, unified, more sustainable, heart-centered approach to the great benefit of all concerned. So, how is all of this impacting us on an individual level? We may be finding that things we've believed all our lives about ourselves, each other, or life itself are being exposed as only partial truths, if not outright falsehoods. We may discover our perceptions have been manipulated by others using incomplete data, encouraging us to draw erroneous conclusions. Memories may be surfacing from our childhoods that, when added to the equation, paint a different picture than the ones we've always held. We may start to recognize we too have been exploiting the shadows for personal gain, lying with the truth to mislead ourselves and those around us. We can start to uncover the genetic influences and programming that have impacted our belief systems, worldviews, and our lives. All these realizations can be devastating. It's never pleasant seeing ourselves and the world in such a harsh light. The first reaction may be to attempt to shove the new information back into the shadows of our denial and maintain the status quo. We may be tempted to polarize against any data or input that challenges our current perceptions and resulting beliefs. Some of us may even become violent to protect the delusions, as evidenced by the recent riots and anarchy. Paranoia and conspiracy theories abound to explain away the emerging data that challenges our pet denials. All of these serve as yet another fine example of presenting facts while lying with the blank spaces in between. Problem being with that approach, the light is as unstoppable as the sunrise. Soon, the shadows we have drawn around ourselves, like tattered cloaks, are destined to disappear altogether, leaving us exposed. Should we choose to embrace change, face our denials, and use the information now available to evolve, we can pass through the gates into the unified field and the wisdom to be found therein. Should we stubbornly cling to our old self-image, separatism, and view of reality, before long, much like the naked emperor in his illusionary new clothes, we'll be caught standing naked, the only ones fooled by our own illusion. Anyone starting to feel a draft on their backside? The beauty of facing and letting go of the old limiting reality is the ability to co-create a new one of our liking, one better suited to the new dawn rising. At lower frequencies, we were victims of our perceptions. Viewing everything as set in stone, we were left to manipulate what we wanted and needed out of the finite resources already manifest. At best, these resources were ill-suited to our purpose, ending in a make-do situation rather than one of co-creation. Once we realize we are indeed children in the sand, with a blank palette, shovels, and buckets at hand, we can combine our resources and imaginations to co-create. Together, we can build wonderful new castles and enjoy them until the next tide. The key is to never lose sight of the fact that while we may manifest what we want for a time, it's still subject to the changing currents of life. Co-creation requires attunement to the cycles of life, flexibility, and willingness to let things pass in their season. Just as with winter, spring, summer, and fall, each season has a purpose in the larger scheme of things. As long as we expand our perceptions to read the overlording seasons of life and cooperate with those seasons, taking right action in proper time, all we do can prosper. But the moment we try to push against the tide and hold on to something beyond its shelf life, we're destined to failure. For no matter how grand our creations, they're still grains of sand, subject to the laws of nature, one of constant change, no matter how we might wish it otherwise. Thank you for joining me, Gwilda Wiyaka, on the Stairway to Heaven, where we provide updates on the energetic currents facilitating our evolution into conscious, powerful co-creators. As I'm sure you've noticed, not only do the Stairway of Heaven episodes stand alone, but they weave together to form a map to evolution and personal empowerment as we enter the new era. To revisit this or any of our past episodes, visit our archives at www.stairwaytoheavenmedia.com. If you'd like to find out more about me, my school, and the evolutionary tools we offer, visit www.findyourpathhome.com. Until next time, may you be blessed on your sacred path to wholeness. We are here. The time is now.